Good afternoon, everyone. Can people hear me okay? All right, great. So welcome to the speakers presentation of our joint reunion. We have, lucky enough to have a lot of great veteran speakers with us this year, as well as a non-veteran speaker. Just working backwards chronologically, Scott Douglas is going to tell us a story. We also have Achilles Kazakis, who's going to tell us about a mission to Vienna. Carl Will is going to tell us about his experiences in Pantanella. Byfield Gordon is going to talk about the Anzio beachhead. Orrin Lee is going to tell us about his experiences in the war. And Wynne Jones is going to tell us about the Markersdorf Airdrome mission. My name is Jonathan Tudor. My father was with the 451st, Captain George Tudor. The Markersdorf Airdrome was an airfield west of Vienna, and it was a strategic target by the Allied bombing campaign, not only because of its airfield, but also because the Messerschmitts were their final assembly point was moved from Wiener Neustadt to Vienna, to the airfield in 1944. So Wynne Jones is going to tell us about the Markersdorf Airdrome mission. Please welcome Wynne.
Well, welcome everyone. And I'm going to say some things today I've never included in my talks, and they're not in a way of being critical, but just so that you understand things that happened 70-some years ago over in Italy. Our crew arrived at the air base in Italy a few days before August the 22nd, 1944. And I have to mention that the pilot of our crew happened to be a captain. From the very beginning, Wing, which was the upper group ahead of our bomb groups, had in mind that he would be part of the Wing group. So this is very important, because as a new crew, instead of being placed tail end Charlie, which was normal for new crews, our crew was placed at either the first or second position in the whole bomb group. This proved to be very, very important on the day of August the 23rd of 1944. Now on August the 22nd, German fighters had shot down 1/3 of our bombers. I think we must have been the lead bomb group for that particular target near Vienna. And the Wing decided the next day that we would sort of get even. So we would bomb the airfield that we figured these fighter planes came from. Happened to be Markersdorf. And because we were going to bomb an airfield, we were carrying what is called fragmentation bombs. This is like a picket fence. When they come out of the aircraft, they fly every which direction. And one thing about it, though, is you cannot have a tight formation if you're carrying fragmentation bombs, because you could easily take your own planes out. Now that made us very vulnerable to German fighter attacks. And the Germans had figured out, I don't know how, that we were going to be coming back that day. And there were cloud formations below our flight pattern as we approached the target. And I'm in the top turret looking around and doing everything. And it was a nice day up to a certain point. And very, very quickly, I can't remember whether this occurred first or second, I saw a B-24 come off of our right wing, just out of gunfire range, but nevertheless, It was a B-24 bomber, and the first thing I did was intercom the captain and say, should I shoot at this B-17? And he said, I don't know. And it took a while for anyone to decide whether we should fire at this B-17 or maybe have one of our escort planes try to take it down. But it turned out to be a big, big mistake because it was the coordinator of the German fighter attack. And the next thing I saw was two B-24s blow up in the rear squadrons of our group. In fact, we lost over half of the planes in the two rear squadrons. And it was, the Germans never got high enough in the air for me to fire one shot at a German fighter plane. The nose gunner in our plane never saw a German plane, but they shot down 9 of our bombers. Some, our crews were able to bail out. Others, we did have one plane in our squadron that was shot down. And I can still remember the German fighter plane. It was so close to the tail of the bomber that the fire coming from the engines of the bomber were almost engulfing the German fighter plane. And later, at one of our reunions, the pilot of the Bob Anderson of the plane that I'm talking about, he said to me, he said, that day, I wondered why the people in the waist of the plane didn't bail out. I didn't have the heart to tell him that I was sure that the German fighter cannon fire had wiped out or injured just about everyone in the waist. Anyway, we finally decided to fire at this B-17, and it just drove back into the clouds, and the fight was over. And as to the record of losses, I would have to say the Germans did a great job. Now, our 451st Bomb Group was awarded a Presidential Unit Citation for this mission. Incidentally, our bomb group, the 451st, I believe was the only one in the 15th Air Force to get 3 Presidential Unit Citations. And I figured that one way they handed these out, if you lost a third of your planes or more, you might get a citation. Well, why did they single us out on this particular mission? First, I think we were leading the formation. Second, we have a big round red ball on the tail of our plane that identifies us very well. And so in 2 days, each day, August 22nd, August 23rd, the Germans shot down 1/3 of our bombers. Well, that meant that we were flying now with reduced crews. So our crew was flying about every mission. And about the, I don't know, maybe 7 missions later, we went out to the plane for a difficult mission, and our tail gunner absolutely could not get on the plane. He just couldn't do it. So we had to, he didn't fly again. And it's a story in itself. The tail gunner they gave us as a replacement was brought all the way from the 8th Air Force to Italy, and it turned out that he had missed a mission in which his crew had been shot down. He never talked about it as to why, but we learned that that was the case. And that day on August 23rd, we went ahead and bombed the German airfield, but of course most of their planes were either in the air or had been moved, and I'm not sure how successful the mission would have been treated, but that was Markersdorf. Now, because we were flying about every mission, and now we don't have a tail gunner, someone decides to send our crew to the Isle of Capri for a few days of R&R. We had nothing to do with this, but we were there on October the 13th, 1944. It happened to be a Friday the 13th of October, 44. And we flew a mission in which our squadron sent out 7 bombers, our 727 squadron that we would have been normally flying with. 2 came back. It took a lot of luck to survive. And I feel so grateful, and I guess I would just have to say that when you're living with the fear of death next door, next day, for 9 months, it changes you. It's been something that you probably don't want to talk about much. I didn't talk about it. Most people didn't even know I was in the Air Force. I was 18 at the time that I flew most of my missions. And we survived. We had to land at Vis one time. And I had a big piece of flak. You've heard people say, don't give me any flak. Well, this is how to understand that. This is the piece that hit the ring gear of my turret. I've had it 70-some years just in my possession. And basically what happened is that it came in the side of the plane and hit the ring gear and fell right to the floor. I didn't know it at the time. It made such a noise that I thought our plane had taken a direct hit. And I knew that if that was the case, it was a matter of seconds to get out of the plane. You never saw wind move so fast. I was out of the plane, not out of the plane, but out of my turret, and I found my parachute. I was standing above the bomb bay, ready to go. And I looked forward. The pilot and co-pilot didn't seem to be doing anything. The plane was flying, and so I sheepishly got back in the turret. I never mentioned it to anyone. But anyway, flak, some targets had as many as 400 flak guns, and they were exploding, and pieces like this, or larger, or smaller, were filling the air that you were flying through to get to the target. You were just lucky if you didn't get hit in some vital place. There were missions in which our plane had several hundred flak holes. We just had one tail gunner injured by flak, and he was sent home. He was the one that replaced the one that quit flying. So anyway, Marcia, you can pass this around, and I'd love to take more time and tell a lot of other interesting stories, but I'm